All right, so welcome to another edition of Tech Talk here on a Monday afternoon. We're going to take a look at some Google Forms, and we're going to look at forms specifically in a sense where we're able to take those forms and create these different paths basically that you can follow as the user. So you'll set up a question, multiple choice, and based on what they say, they're either going to see one set of questions or get redirected to a different set of questions. And you can decide how this is going to go depending on what you're doing. This could be a math test where you're given some easy questions, and if they get them wrong, they get some more easy questions, and if they get them right, they can kind of skip ahead and move on with the tougher stuff. You could do it with um, kind of a literacy test, maybe, where you're asking about how things are going in a story or how things should progress in a story. You can do it really anything. You could ask it based on geography and, do you like the northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere? And based on that, ask a bunch of questions about countries in those areas. Whatever you want. It's sky's the limit. It's basically choose your own adventure in Google Form format. So let's take a look at one that I've got started here that we're going to jump into as a group and start adding things to, and I'll show you how to set up some of the branching stuff. So a little bit of it's created for you already. So when I jump over to Google Drive here for a moment, I've got a couple things created already. Now, to create my form, I would generally do this in my own drive. I wouldn't want to do this in a shared drive. And the reason for that is because once you put it in the shared drive, say it was the staff drive or something, at your building, then all the other staff members are going to be able to edit that form when they click on it. Especially if it's staff who are going to be filling this out, that's not what you want. So I would go to the folder in my own drive typically. This is a case where I went somewhere else. And regardless, I'm going to click New and go to Google Forms. Now I could, just to do it from a template, if there was something already set up that kind of worked with what I'm going to do, I could make it a quiz, which basically is a blank form that just toggles on the quiz options. So you can assign points if people are correct or incorrect in their answers. But since this is really a choose your own path kind of a situation here, and that's even what I named our template here, the quiz option isn't really relevant. You're not right or wrong depending on how you choose to behave essentially in this scenario. This is more like a social story, I guess we'd call it. So I'd go with a blank form in that situation. Now, to figure out how this is all going to play out, I created a little Google drawing. That's also on the new option here. When I go to more, you can create a drawing. And I did that so that we could create this little flowchart of decision making, basically. So the idea here is the form is going to start off with the description of a scenario here on the playground where we witness Kenny being a bully on the playground. He's decided who gets to play on the playground equipment, who gets to play on the jungle gym, because he's the king. And you see this, and you have to decide between basically three things. Do I want to ignore the situation? Am I going to report this to the teacher, or am I going to step in and try and deal with it? And depending on the decisions you make, that's going to flow down through our little chart here, and you're going to sort of see that scenario play out as the user of this form. So at the very bottom of our little graphic here, there is a link, and I'm going to copy this right now. And I'm going to go paste that into our chat here for a second so that you guys all have access to that. I can paste it in here. Okay. And I will go ahead and paste the same thing into a new tab here so that we're all on the same page. I'm going to paste that right in there. Hit enter. There we go. And if you're following along after the fact, looking at it on our Tech Talk page, then I'll provide the same link again on the Tech Talk page. So I'm going to go make a copy, and it's going to create my own new copy now in my own drive of my Choose Your Own Path form here. So I'm just going to take copy of out of there. And I've started the form here. We can see that at the very beginning, we've got a little image inserted. I wanted a picture of our bully. And it says, Kenny has declared himself king of the jungle gym and will only allow his friends to play on it. You look over and see him blocking and pushing a smaller kid in your class who just wants to climb on the jungle gym and hang on the monkey bars. So, decision time. I've set up this as a multiple choice question here, and you've got to be careful of that. Sometimes people will choose, say, checkboxes, except that doesn't work here. Checkboxes is an option where I can choose sort of option A and option B and option C. So if I were to choose multiple things, it can't make a decision as to where to send me next. Checkboxes are great when you're asking a question where that's, what do you want for lunch? I want a drink and I want a fries and I want a burger. That's fine. This is pick one. So multiple choice, or if we had a lot of options, you could go with the drop-down question as well. The functionality would be the same. I've left it at multiple choice right now. And then what we're going to do after that question, and I've done it here for you already, is we click this last option here that says Add Section. So Add Section, we can think of it as like a new page within our form here. Now normally you just add a section, and you'll see here at the bottom, after this first one that we've asked the question on, it just continues to the next section. And you would get to here, and you could fill in section 2 and start answering questions there. So for us, our section 2 is going to be this first option. What happens when I ignore Kenny? Drag that over so we can see it better. What happens here? So ignoring, that's what we've decided to do. Make that bold for us. You decide to pretend that you don't see what's happening. And while trying to ignore Kenny, instead, you choose to go play somewhere else in the yard, or you decide to head over and try and just play on the monkey bars like nothing's happening. Just ignore the entire situation as if nothing's there. So from there, the next option that I've written in for you is the step in option. I've skipped over the teacher part. We're going to get to that. You've stepped in, decided that you're not going to tolerate what is happening here to your smaller classmate. So when you stand up to Kenny and tell him it's time to stop being mean, two options here that we've outlined. Kenny is either surprised that someone actually said no to him and backs off instead of getting into a fight, and everyone, if I scroll to the end of that sentence, gets to play on the jungle gym. The other option, of course, Kenny starts pushing and insulting you and the other student. So you take both of them, sorry, let me scroll to the end. There you go. You take both of you away and report it to the teacher. So you can see that brings us back to the report a teacher option. So you may have gone there right away, or you may have gone this route and then ended up on reporting to the teacher. So we're going to add that section now. That means I'm going to come to the bottom of this little toolbar that just floats next to whatever question I've clicked on. And you'll see if I go up here, it moves up and now it's here. So if I were to be on this question and then I clicked on, say, add a section, it would add the new section right here. If I'm up farther, of course, it would add it somewhere else. Or if I hit on one of these add a question, it would add the question right after this one that I'm actually currently selected on. So let's see, just to fit with our little graphic here of ignore and then teacher and step in, I will go ahead and click on this section 2 and then add a new section. I'm going to call this one report to the teacher. And this is where you guys can follow along with your own form that you've created your own copy of, and this is where you're going to need to start clicking. So you could do that either after the section that was already there, the step in section, or you can do what I just did, click on the ignoring question and add the section right after it. So it's a new sort of section 3 in this case. And it's important that I'm naming these sections. So ignore what's happening, report to the teacher, and step in. And you'll see why that's critical in a moment here. But under our report to the teacher option, what did we say? The teacher is going to speak with Kenny. So let's just write that into the description portion here. So you've reported to the teacher. That was your choice in this case. So I'm going to say the teacher speaks to Kenny about bullying. And in there, we're going to add some multiple choice questions again. So this is where we're going to have to decide what we want to put in here. I left that blank for you on the little decision chart here, so you can create a copy of this as well. In fact, let me just send you the link for that. And to do that, if you've never seen this before, there's a little bonus tip. I'm going to click into the address bar of this particular file. It needs to be available to everybody, and I've already done that actually. I've gone to the share button and I've made sure that everybody has viewing access to this file. It's the only way this little trick works. You have to at least be able to view it. So with that done, I can click into the address bar here. I'm going to remove the word edit, so there's nothing after the slash. If this was a document or a spreadsheet or a presentation or something, they'll also say edit and then have some other gibberish after it. Just delete everything right of the slash and replace it with the word copy. I can hit enter, and this link I will provide to you guys right now as well. So I'm going to copy that and go paste it into our chat for you. And again, I'll keep that available to you guys as well when when I post it on Tech Talk later. Let me just go back. Actually, no, I will use that so that I don't mess up the original one here for you. I don't want to start writing on that one, then you won't have blanks. So there we go. Now I've made my own fresh copy of it. And we can write in some options here for what happens after the teacher actually speaks with Kenny. You get to decide what's going to happen here. Let's see. He decides to listen and tries to be better. There we go. Tries. Or potentially, he just gets angry and is sent, come on, to the office. We'll go with those options for now. So let's write them in there. Go to our quiz, and I need my multiple choice options so that you can decide what's going to happen here. So it's multiple choice. Let's see. After being spoken to, tab, 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 Kenny listens, and I don't need a comma there, and tries to be better. Or Kenny gets mad. And sent to the office. There's obviously lots of different steps and options and things that you might choose to do, but we're going to keep it simple here for the sake of just explaining how the forms work. Now, one thing that I won't be able to do in here, as I look at each of these different sections, because it's going to start skipping over certain sections depending on my choices, I can't make things required. Like here, under the ignore what's happening, I can't go to this multiple choice question and say this is required. Because if you didn't choose the ignore option, you're never going to get to this page, and it kind of stalls the whole form. It just breaks things and doesn't quite work right. So we're going to ignore that for a second and not make anything particularly required. But here's what we will do. Now that we've got our three sections, so ignore, report, and step in, now we need to start actually directing our user to these different sections depending on what they've chosen. So we're going to come back to the top here, and we see our little Kenny graphic. And we've got our multiple choice question here. This is the one we need to click into. The when you witness the bullying behavior, what do you choose to do? Well, let's see. If we come to this question, once I click on it, I get some choices here like duplicate the question or trash the question. Instead, what I need to do is hit the three dots I see in the lower corner here. When I hit that, there's the option for adding a description. So in any question you ever create in a form, you can always click description and add more information about the question and how you want it answered. So if you were asking something pretty simple, like just a simple question up at the top, but then you need to sort of elaborate as to what you expect from the student in terms of how they're going to choose to answer, regardless, math, geography, whatever, you can write anything you want into that description box. I don't need it right now. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. But what you do need to do on your own forms right now is go to the section based on answer. That's the choice we need to turn on here. And now that we've created all these sections, you know where we're going. This probably makes a lot of sense. I need to go to a particular section based on the answer they give me. So I click that, and I get these three little drop-down lists. So the next section here is called Ignore What's Happening. And that's what I'm looking for here. If they choose to ignore what's happening, I'm going to click this little drop-down list, and I can see the names of those different sections. This is where I said it's kind of super critical to actually name them so that you help yourself out when you get to this stage. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what section is what. Especially if you chose, when we added report the teacher, if you had chosen to go to the bottom and hit insert section, well, this one will be section 4, and this is actually section 3. So important to have those names in there. Just help yourself out. So I'm going to choose ignore what's happening. And then under the report to the teacher, of course, I'm going to go ahead and hit report teacher. And under step into the situation, I'm going to choose step in. So now no matter what they'd say here, they're going to get directed to another section. Well, the default right now after this is continue to next section. Well, that's not really what I want to do anymore, is it? Now I'm going to just ignore this because my question has taken care of it. In fact, this is the only question I can make required because it's the only question on that first sheet. They have to answer it, and that will then direct them to one of these three sections. So I'm not worried about this part here. I will be for the next two, and you'll see why here. When we hit to ignore what's happening, I need to make some decisions again. Let's see. Based on what happens here, if they go play somewhere else on the yard, and I look at my decision tree, I do have another section to add in here. If they decide to go play somewhere else on the yard, then, let's see, they're going to see that their upset classmate later. Later on in time, they're going to see that upset classmate. They're going to feel bad about that, and they may choose to go and report that to the teacher. So we get back to that first block. So let's see what happens when we either go somewhere else on the yard or try and play on the monkey bars. Well, what we had here was play on the yard, go to the monkey bars. So I need another section after this. I'm going to go ahead and click onto this question and insert a new section. This is going to be tried to ignore. Oh, Kenny. All right. And based on trying to ignore them, let's see. If we go somewhere else on the yard, let's try that one. Go back to my thing here just to make sure. Yeah. This is, sorry, try to play somewhere else. There, that's what that section should be called. And when you did that, either you did that and later you were upset and decided to report to the teacher. So let's see. You return to class after recess and see your upset classmate. Or see, let's make it a little different. See how upset your classmate is after being bullied. There we go. That's better. So you choose to then, you choose to report that to the teacher. And the other option would be, I mean, whatever you want, I guess. You could say you continue to ignore the issue. Okay, now in this case, what I'm going to do is say, you know what, we need to, again, go to sections based on our answers. And if we chose to report, well, then that's going to take us back to report to the teacher. If you choose to ignore it, this is where I'll leave it up to you guys, depending on how deep you want to go with your stories. You could add another section with a whole bunch of text. That would be an option, and say, you know, the result of this, your action is this. Or in this case, if we're just sort of done with it, we can go ahead and submit the form. Maybe that's your last step. You just choose to ignore it again, and that's the end of your day. And we'll leave it at that for now. Then the other option, of course, is going to be when I come up here, ignore what's happening. I'm going to have to add in again my go to section based on answer, because we've got the go play somewhere else option. All right, try to play somewhere else. Or there's head over to the monkey bars. Well, when we look at our decision tree, if we try to play on the monkey bars, this can go two ways. You're going to get bullied by Kenny. He's already there running the show. So when you try and play on the monkey bars, you get bullied by Kenny. That means you're either going to go play somewhere else or you're going to report it to the teacher. So after trying to play on the monkey bars, I'm going to add a section. Head over to the monkey bars anyway. And that results in, after trying to get on the monkey bars, one of two things happen. Kenny starts bullying you, or you leave and, wait, is that what I said? Yeah, get bullied by Kenny is what's going to happen, sorry. So head over to the monkey bars, sorry, get bullied by Kenny. That's what happens, sorry. There we go. Now, this is where you're either going to report that to the teacher, or you're going to leave and play somewhere else. Make that required, or not required, sorry, make that a section option. So this is going to, again, report to the teacher or play somewhere else. You can see why having a little chart for decision making is handy in this situation for sure. So when I scroll back up and I click on this one, I couldn't fill this in yet because I hadn't created this section. So this is heading over to the monkey bars anyway. Perfect. So we've got that part of the decision tree sorted out. Yeah, we've gone all the way down through here and then back up to reporting to the teacher. So for stepping in, let's deal with that part here. If I choose to step into what the situation here, what we decided was either you also get bullied and you go report it, or he backs off. So let's see. Kenny is surprised someone said no to him and backs off. Or let's go to sections based on an answer. If he's surprised and backs off, then it's over. We can just submit the form and we're done. If he starts pushing and you decide to go report that, you're going to report that to the teacher. So now that section's sorted out. So this is all dealt with. Here in the report to the teacher, we decided that after speaking with Kenny, he's either going to listen and try to be better, or he's going to get angry. So let's see. Reports to the teacher after being spoken to, he either listens and tries to get better. In either case, this is the end. So I don't need to actually decide anything here unless I was going to flesh out the story even more. So I don't need to add this go to section option. All I'm going to do is say after this particular section, I want, and you'll see here, I'm clicking this little drop down option that is right below the section itself. I click that drop down and now I'm going to say submit form. And once you get to that report to the teacher option and the teacher deals with it, this form is submitted. There's nothing else that we're going to sort of make decisions here as the user, as the student. And that takes care of our various scenarios here. So to test that, of course, I can go ahead and hit the preview button here, the eyeball, and we'll see how it looks. So where I mentioned that kind of like each section is a bit like a page on your form, you can see that here in the sense that there's nothing below this. There's the page we're looking at right now. Now, if I decide to ignore what's happening and go next, I get one simple question. Well, trying to ignore them, I'm going to play somewhere else, or I'm going to go over to the monkey bars. Well, this is the longer path. I'm going to head over to the monkey bars and make sure all these little options are working. So I head over and I get bullied by Kenny. I decide to leave and go somewhere else. And then I get back in the class afterwards and I see my upset classmate and I either ignore or report to the teacher. That gets me back to that report to the teacher option that most of our other choices are routing themselves back to. And hopefully Kenny listens and tries to be better. And we could actually have like a little summary if we wanted to afterwards. Instead of just submitting, we could actually kick it to a page that just has a description about this is how it turned out based on your answers and your choices, basically. Now I can go back, and follow a different path if I wanted to, but let me just explain that last choice here. If we wanted to, we could come to the very end here. We could add a final section, and I could call that something like result of, let's see one that we skipped. Result of standing up to Kenny. Standing up to Kenny. So this is the option where he backed off, I guess, and everything was fine and nobody got in trouble for anything. Now why? Oops. Okay, this is a good little mistake I just made. I clicked on section 6 and then hit new section, and it immediately inserted that new section right here. and it kicked this question down below. So it's actually part of my section 7, which I did not want, but I can fix it really easily. I'm going to hover over this question, and I see these 6 little dots appear. I'm going to click on those dots and drag up, and I can drag this right back up into the section where it belongs. Perfect. So instead of Kenny is surprised and sits down and we immediately submit the form, I can now say, all right, you know what? I actually wanted to go to the result of standing up to Kenny. I'm not going to ask any more questions down here. What I'm instead going to do is add the title and text option, and I could type whatever I want in here. Blah, 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 blah. I could do it that way. Technically, I could probably even skip that and do it right here. I click right into the description and just type whatever it is that I need to type in there about what happened after you stood up to Kenny and how he realized the error of his ways and will never bully anybody again. Whatever. Your choice, how you want that to play out there. And then so after this section, it's done. Like there's nothing else to do. Form would get submitted basically. The other ones could be stuff like after reporting to the teacher. Right here, we didn't send the form anywhere. What we could do is, again, add a section, throw a whole description about what happened to Kenny afterwards, and have this section, instead of submitting, could go right to that final page with a description of what happened. Similarly, when you go to the ignore options, if they didn't report to the teacher and they just left to play somewhere else, and we continue to ignore the issue in class, even after seeing our classmate, we could, instead of submitting the form, kick them to a third sort of results page and tell them sort of how that impacts maybe their friend or themselves or their social situations or however you want to break that down. So you can kind of end it wherever it makes the most sense for you. How drawn out do you want the entire social scenario to go? But with that done, it's all sorted out. And of course, I don't share forms when I want them to be filled in by people. I wouldn't go to these 3 dots and add collaborators. That's the kind of thing that we normally do with other files when we want to have those individuals view and then collaborate with us. If it was a document, they get to write on it. In a spreadsheet, they get to enter numbers, that kind of stuff. I don't want the users changing my form at all, ever. So that's where forms are a little different. We don't share forms. We send them to people. So that's the send button up at the top. Now I could type in an email address or a mailing list. If I wanted to send this to my tips and tricks right now, I could go to the tips and tricks mailing list. There we go, tips. I saw it right there, tips and tricks. I've got 67 people on that list at the moment. And I could just dump them in there and send this off. I could go to the link option and copy that link and go paste it into my Google Classroom and say, hey, everybody fill in this form. I could take that link if I was making it like an assignment in Google Classroom, I could link to it that way, certainly. If I wanted to embed this, I could grab embed code and throw it on a website, probably the least likely option that you might do, but I'll go ahead and do that, and we could copy. Now that big long address is actually kind of the exact same thing as if I were to come up and hit the preview button. So you could hit preview and then copy the address out of here and go paste it into somewhere. It's the same thing. It's still just going to bring them to this page and let them fill it out. So I'll close that for now. Perfect. Because I made a copy from that make a copy link, this should be in my own drive. If I click this little folder, it's in my drive. So if I want to organize that and put it, say in this case, I throw it into my Tech Talk folder under, say, resources. There we go. Move it there. And then I know that that's there for me next time, and I could use it whenever I need to use it. But it's my form. I haven't messed around with where responses fall or anything like that. That's up to you, and we can certainly talk about that on another time, where you can reach out and let me know. But we will be here, as usual, every Monday, looking to do more tech talks, either at 1 o'clock or at 4 o'clock, depending on the topic, whether it's sort of who it's aimed at, essentially. And we'll get through all sorts of different topics. You can ask all sorts of different questions, of course. And then, again, all of this will be available on the Tech Talk page on our doc. So you'll be able to access everything after the fact and go through the whole exercise and check it out for yourself again. See if you want to create things differently or send the kids down a different path. So, talk to you next time.